Is Conor McGregor underrated? It's an interesting thought. On the one hand, you have probably the most successful, highest paid MMA athlete of all time. Certainly the most popular, the most visible, who did special things on his way up, but he's far removed from that. And there's been a lot of controversy, a lot of legal problems. And so I feel like some of his greatness kind of gets swept under the rug, and a lot of the new fans might not even realize how good Conor actually was in his prime. So, we're going to talk about that a little bit today, and if Conor is in fact underrated. You have that initial run up through the featherweight division where he was just starching people, Marcus Brimage, that beautiful uppercut, and he sparked out Dustin Poirier. He blew his knee out against Max, but then wrestled him and controlled him. He knocked out Dennis Seaver. He finished Chad Mendez. He finished the legendary Jose Aldo in 13 seconds. Just, win after win after win, knockout after knockout, just special. And, everybody's like, well, his whole way up, because he talked so much, everybody's like, well, if he fights, this guy, or if he fights that guy, then he's gonna lose. If he fights a wrestler, he'll lose. Well, then he fought Chad Mendez, but the naysayers would still say, oh well, it was Chad coming off the couch on, like, what was it, 2 weeks notice, something like that. But also in hindsight, looking at that, a lot of these guys he fought during the time didn't become who they would become yet. So you got them discounted as well. A lot of people, when he was making his come up, were like, oh yeah, but who is he really beat? He beat this new kid named Max Holloway, who then went on to win 13 fights in a row and become one of the best featherweights of all time, and now one of the best lightweights of all time. So yeah, that guy. Oh well, he beat Dustin Poirier, who then went on to become one of the most exciting and successful lightweights of all time, holding a top five position for a decade, something like that. So and Jose Aldo's resume already spoke for itself at the time. But people are doubting him. But then he goes up. He has the fight with Nate Diaz, who's just a zombie, and he got finished. And then a lot of people doubted him, and he was determined to get that one back. So he came back and beat Nate over a hard fought 5 rounds, and he comes and wins the lightweight title against Eddie Alvarez, and probably to this day the most impressive championship performance in UFC history. I mean, the vision. If you just go back and watch that fight, I mean, he was dodging punches by millimeters and coming back with vicious fast counters. I mean, the level of timing, precision, vision that guy had was in a league of its own, quite literally. And even if we look at the Floyd Mayweather fight, a lot of people, especially boxing peers, they didn't give him a chance at all. And I don't care what the judges said in that fight. Conor won like the first 6 rounds until he got tired, which maybe part of that was Floyd's strategy. It could have been, but also nobody's just letting themselves get hit. Nobody does that. So the fact that he was landing cleanly and outboxing Floyd for those first 5 or 6 rounds is an impressive feat in and of itself. So then we have the Khabib thing, and I think a lot of people get this skewed because oh well, Khabib dropped him and choked him out in the fourth, and all of Khabib's supporters just harp on the fact that, oh yeah, fuck that guy, Khabib got him, and all is right in the world, revenge, they shut the loudmouth up. But I think something that gets missed in that fight is that Conor actually done better against Khabib than I think anybody else did. Like, and this was a Conor who had already started his partying and just his vitriol, and this was the hate era Conor, which I don't think was the same Conor that fought Eddie Alvarez. Now, I'm not saying that Eddie Alvarez Conor would have beat Khabib either. That was always going to be a stylistically tough matchup for him. I think he could have. I mean, I think that Conor could beat anybody. But I think it gets missed that Conor actually defended takedowns, stayed safer on the ground for the most part, and done better on the feet against Khabib than anybody else did. With some exceptions from Khabib's earlier career. A lot of people think Gleason Tebow beat Khabib. It was a close fight, but you know what I'm saying. Khabib went on to then what he finished. Who did Khabib fight after Conor? Was it? I know he fought Justin Gaethje in there and finished Justin in like early in the second round. I think he fought Dustin. I think he finished Dustin as well, but I think he finished Dustin like the third or fourth, right? Um, but you get the point. He was much more dominant against everybody else except for Conor. So I think that gets missed. People talk about how Conor, is one dimensional, or all he had was the big left hand, and that's just not true. I mean, that was the finishing move, was that big left hand. But he had a whole game, man. His movement was in a league of its own. His kicks to set up that left hand, to move you, to position you, to keep you on the outside, make you feel like you need to blitz to get in, and then he counter and crack you with that left. Um, his vision on the shots, his timing, I mean, all of it, and even his wrestling. That's what I'm saying. His takedown defense against Khabib was better than pretty much anybody's. And then he out wrestled Max, which I know Max isn't a wrestler, and that's a younger Max, but still he has wrestling. I mean, he came up training with Gunnar Nelson, Dylan Dennis, which I know he hits a lot of shit in the MMA world too. But at the time his BJJ credentials were pretty high tier. So I think Connor gets overlooked a lot for his shenanigans, and rightfully so. The guy's done it to himself. There's been a lot of fuck ups. There's been a lot of accusations. I don't want to go into them. Needless to say, he's had issues, and he's brought a lot of the scrutiny on to himself. But I think that he's underrated. Yeah, I think people underrate Conor McGregor, because also they underrate him because he didn't defend his belts. Okay, valid. It's hard to defend belts, but I mean, he was moving on to bigger and better things. And then also, how few of people actually win belts, and then to win two belts, and to do it in the fashion that he did too. Because it's one thing to go up and fight tooth and nail, and maybe you scrape by and win a second belt, but to spark out Jose Aldo in 13 seconds, and then to go up and just completely destroy Eddie Alvarez, make him look like he was an amateur, that was crazy. That was special. And then the fact that he did it in Cage Warriors too. Cage Warriors, it's not UFC, but for a regional scene, like, Cage Warriors is a good proving ground. There's good fighters in Cage Warriors. So the fact that he done that in two promotions and made it look easy is very impressive. And I think because of the vitriol and the nature of what he became after, and the things he done, and even the way he conducted himself, and say the third Poirier fight, and the Habib fight, just the pivot he made as a human being turned so many people off to such a high degree that I think it made them underrate him as well, and act like, oh, he was never actually as good as he really is. Because love him or hate him, Conor McGregor is a special athlete that doesn't come around very often. I think Dustin Poirier even recently said, he's a terrible person with God-given gifts. That probably sums it up pretty well. I don't know if he's a terrible person. I think you can do some terrible things and maybe not necessarily be a terrible person. Everybody makes mistakes, and I grant he's done a lot. I'm just not going to be, judge, jury, and executioner and label him as a terrible person. Maybe he is, maybe he isn't. He seems like he's trying to put a better foot forward right now and make positive changes in his life. To me, he seems sincere, but time will tell. Time will tell if he's really had a change, and that terrible person thing was just a dark streak in his life. I mean, the reality is, when you come from nothing and are all of a sudden an absolute mega star and filthy rich and have all this power and money and fame, like I don't know how many people wouldn't go a little crazy. Now, I'm not saying everybody's going to do the kind of shit that he got accused of. I mean, he went crazy. He, by all appearances, done some pretty dark things. So I'm not going to paint everybody under that label. I'm just going to say, have a shred of understanding, because when you get thrust into that position, we all like to think that we would do great things, or oh yeah, if I won, all this money and I was all of a sudden famous, I would use that platform to help people constantly and build wells and donate most of the money, and I would still just live in you know a meager establishment, and just try to spread goodness to the world. We all like to think we do that, but you don't know. I mean, you give somebody endless wealth, power, and fame, it would corrupt a lot of people and make, especially at a young age too. I mean, he was what, mid 20s when he started getting like really famous, something like that. Um, I think it would make a lot of us do a lot of dumb things. Maybe not as dumb of things as he done, but we'd make mistakes. So yeah, that's all I'm gonna say on that. But yeah, I just want to put this video out because I think that it kind of gets missed how great Conor actually was. Whether he still is or not, we'll see Saturday night, I suppose. But I think for the time being, Conor McGregor might be one of the most underrated fighters in the UFC. And that's my video.